table 1. Does your rapporteur want to come up? And also give your name when you get up there. Wonderful. Thank you.
Hi, good morning, everyone. I'm Modita Suri, and the problem that my table identified was lack of knowledge, ignorance towards the issue. And so then we started discussing, and the most important thing to realize is why is there ignorance before we can deal or we can address the matter that there is ignorance. So we spoke about how our education system is not fully doing justice. Like when someone graduates, we just talked about most of the people who graduate from high school cannot define what greenhouse gases are, what's global warming, and that's something alarming. So we discussed how if we had these really small 4 to 5 seconds probably media advertisements, if you read on newspaper, if you see on television, hey, please switch off your light, hey, don't drive if you can carpool or take a bus or some things like that. Then we talked about urbanization in the sense that most of people living in the cities have so much that they've been taking it for granted and they are not even aware of it. We spoke about how it's the most important thing right now is there is ignorance. Some of us have identified it. It's important to communicate the urgency of this ignorance. People have to know that not only we are not aware of the environmental damages, it's really urgent to address it. You can't take next 50 years to accepting, oh, okay, I'm ignored and I want to be informed now. We don't have that time. And then we had discussion on how at a political and an economic level, when decisions are made, when policies are made, it's important to understand and communicate to your audience, to your population, the environmental ramifications of the growth or the political policies. So I think overall, I'd like to summarize by there is ignorance, people are not aware of the problems our environment or our planet is facing, so it's important, one, to start at bottom education level. This should be like one of the core subjects. As you study history, you study maths, and then you have environmental science or something like that. And then it's important to have media awareness. It's important to have more discussions like this because we are the population who knows that something's wrong. We need to focus on the other 90% who have no idea about it.
So my name is Giovanna Govea, and our topic was a culture of consumption mentality. And I think the root causes of this, we couldn't come down to one thing. I mean, obviously ignorance is a huge part of it, but we also thought of other subcategories such as economic capitalism, growth and its goal, and the lack of connectedness, the lack of recognition of its importance, living in a power structure society, so the way we measure our success is actually more is better. The more you have, the better off you are. And skepticism. A lot of people don't really think that there's a problem with consuming more than we need to. Exploitation of different parts of the world, so like third world countries, and kind of like a man versus nature kind of mentality that we have. So these are all things that we think are root causes to the problem. And we came up with a couple leverage points for this change, such as a better understanding of our goal for growth and how to expose and incorporate the externalities of the cost of something consumed. So when you pay $3 for a can of soda, how much are you actually paying for? Like how much did it take to get that can of soda in your hand? And try to incorporate and instill a different kind of psychological perspective to our culture and kind of enculture that like at a young age so that we can deal with these issues.
Thank you.
My name is Daniela, and we were discussing overpopulation and growth, although I think we kind of focused more on some of the overpopulation issues. In terms of root causes, you know, the basic biological urge to pass on your genes. We also identified the newness of the contraceptive technology, the costs of contraception, a general lack of education, as well as religious views that prohibit contraception and restrict and suppress women. We identified that in developing nations, there can be a sense of a need to counterbalance losses due to disease, and so having more children results. We also noted the issue of sort of global governance and a lack of institutions that are addressing the issue. In terms of leveraging change, we thought that improving healthcare might be important in developing nations where disease impacts them more. Education and empowerment of women, as well as I think in religious institutions, making it so that women have more control over how many children that they have in their bodies. We also talked about social security systems and the fact that they have been shown to reduce families' sizes, in that a family who has the security of the community may not need to rely on children for support. So I think that may have covered most of the things that we talked about.
We were working on the issue of overconsumption. Some of the root causes that we found were value systems and cultures historically throughout the developed world, but increasingly throughout the developing world, as people across the world try and have the same standard of living that we've enjoyed throughout the developed world for so long. Another root cause was a design issue, the issue of designed obsolescence and the inability to truly recycle a lot of the products that we all use every day. And some of the points of leverage that we found were education as to the true impact of consumption, making the sustainable option also the economic option, because people already relate to the value of economics and trying to save money, so trying to make that possible. Just teaching about the true value of products and instilling the true cost of what a product does to the environment and people throughout its lifespan into the actual cost of the item, as well as just generally trying to find solutions that meet people on the level they're comfortable with, not automatically enforcing them to have the same value system that you do off the bat, but trying to meet them where they are, whether or not they assume that global warming is happening or any of the other issues, but trying to find solutions that they're willing to do from whatever mindset they're working with.
Thank you.
My name is Lila Sloan. I'm for table 3 and 8, and we discussed overpollution. And we figured there were 2 big root causes, or 2 general things that we dealt with. One is sort of the man, I guess you could say. It's corporations and factories, poor regulation of them, the unknown effects of chemicals, and how chemicals are not regulated enough that we use. An issue with globalization, how other places are regulated less, so factories will often go there instead of have to deal with the regulations in the US, and there's a lack of national and international laws to deal with this. And then issues of non-point sources, such as with farmers or cars. And the leverage points of change for that would be more regulation, and for corporations there's a need for dialogue to figure out what they're doing, what the community wants, and between the corporations and regular people. And then the other big root cause is the everyday person. They're apathetic, lazy, there's a huge lack of knowledge, which I know Table 2 worked with, and there's a peer pressure of what's cool. Is it cool to actually throw something in the trash and pick it up if you miss, or is it cool to just toss it or get the newest toy and use it and then just throw it away? And things to do with that, some leverage points are bring the issue closer to people's doorsteps, possibly civil disobedience, sort of opposite mentality peer pressure, to make the effort and say, oh, I throw stuff away, why don't you do it, I'm cooler. And education is a huge issue. Education of people in schools at a young age, make it repetitive, often early, and have it be an example. So have a lot of recycling bins instead of just a trash in each classroom. And then just in general, the everyday person should consume less.
Great, thank you.
Synthesized it into the 5 main points. So those points were, the first one is to act, and that includes practice what you preach, educate people, lobbying, focus on most important points and what we consume. So whether it's food and agriculture, energy, all of that, and it needs to be done on an individual, community, and national level, and international. The second main point was identify the real cost of our actions. Third is think long-term. Fourth is change the consciousness, so elevate planetary consciousness, elevate individual consciousness. At the end we were talking about governmental consciousness and what's hidden, what happens, to make people aware, but big consciousness. And then there needs to be a fundamental cultural change that promotes going green, so that basically we make going green as exciting as reaching the moon once was, and being the first to reach the moon.
Actually, I just have a quick question. Did you look globally or concentrate on the USA?
I think we jumped between global and individual communal level. There was some focus on the US because that's what we know the best, but that was not forefront in our mind when we talked about it.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Kaz. And, we pretty much did a similar process where we took a time to sort of review all of the various Plan Bs and then compile together the best ideas from each, and then sort of added our other ideas that may not have been mentioned. One of the first thing that we came up with, that no matter what the plan is, the government and the leadership needs to work with the public rather than forcing their own policy. And that comes from working from the bottom up as well as the top down. There needs to be more of cooperation between the two, and keeping it that way everyone can be on the same page, and rather than just someone saying, oh, we're going to do this now, and not everyone's going to go with it if they feel like they're being dragged into something they may not necessarily agree with. Part 2 was to put a shift in economic focus and redistribution of business and wealth in terms of changing to the green forms of work, taking the business. Right now there's a huge business, a lot of money invested in the oil companies and everything else. Start taking that money and supporting it to newer forms of energy, and then eventually, like moving to a new house, you start paying off on the old house and supporting to the new one, and eventually you can just drop the old one and have a newer, better place to live, and in this case, business to work with. The third option, or the third point, was the media has a very, very strong impact on society as a whole, And if they can change to address issues both seriously and serious and comedic approach to these issues. Because a lot of people will take comedians talking about social issues and laugh at it for the time, and then after they go home from a show or later that night from watching TV, that's when it starts to sink in and people are like, wait, this is actually something that's important. More people tend to take that seriously rather than attacking a serious ad. Fourth point was change in cultural outlook and success on life goals, sort of a change in how you approach success and the goals of growth. Our last point was to encourage sustainable technologies in developing countries to prevent history from repeating itself with current developed nations. And that's
Sounds great, thank you.
Hello, my name is Chase. Ours is a little bit more broad, but our 5 major changes, it was to change expectations of cultural norms with emphasis on sustainability. So changing the expectations and change the measure of success from the old ways of a GDP to a gross domestic quality of life. Our third was change expectations of accountability for long-term impacts of their actions through an international system. When planning for growth, to incorporate an efficient and sustainable innovative technologies and ideas. And for the 5th one, just incorporating the cost of externalities into our economic system. Yeah, so that's it. Thanks.
For our Plan B, we decided to focus on incentives to motivate change. When it comes to industrial and commerce, we were thinking more of money as an incentive for the big picture. And when it comes to more local situations, we can instill a little bit of a fear factor to the community in order to not lose that the ethics and making it all about money in order to do the right thing. We also said that we need to focus on education in order to change our whole cultural kind of to motivate cultural action, and instilling an educational incentive with the use of media as a tool would also help not only mature kids to knowing what the real situation is when it comes to the environment and the seriousness of it. Also, by valuing our future generations over present day issues when it comes to politics, and to kind of think more on the long run when we vote for our politicians instead of just promising for tomorrow. Using, as well as like when it comes to commerce and consumption, using more reusable resources rather than overconsumption. And then we would also want to encourage health incentive alongside with the fear factor, more exposure to the facts. And the last one was kind of an incentive for green growth and kind of giving our future a little bit of hope for a more greener economy and a greener future.
Great, thank you.
I'm going to run down sort of some of the preferred actions that different individuals had in our group. Going forward, we wanted to evaluate the results of today's conference We wanted to look at, did we meet the conference objectives, and did we inspire participants to action after the conference. Next time, invite more industry individuals who have different points of view, and we can engage in sort of more dialogue that way, and education as well. Let's see. Outreach to inner city and disadvantaged individuals and communities. We want to, again, bring in others who are not like-minded, politicians, businessmen, and facilitate productive dialogue. Another issue is just raising awareness in the community, people of all walks of life, from little kids all the way on up. Just raising awareness about this event so that we can get more perspectives. Increasing outreach to schools would be helpful. We want to have more working groups to make this conference run smoothly and delegate fundraising or publicity, volunteer coordinating, just so that this division of labor, I think, focus on next steps and actions that participants can take home with them, i.e., go home and talk to your politician about an issue or something like that. We want to, after this, synthesize the proceedings, follow up with all the participants, and maybe send out what the youth plan B from this conference was, a summary of the conference and what we kind of got out of it. Next time, bring in more expert testimony, and last thing, just have specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-bound goals. So that's the little acronym, SMART goals. Focus on action and take-home messages. I sort of already said that. Let's see. Developing participants as leaders and ambassadors back to their home communities, and also creating a forum for discussion before and after the event so people can stay connected.
All right. Some of the things that we would like to see happen or see improved is just overall more participants in general. Get a lot more people from various backgrounds. Particularly, try and increase exposure to high school and college level participants, because a lot of those would be involved in this sort of conference. I think another one trying to bring in possibly some other NGO groups who might be involved in specific issues. So people who may grow a general interest in the movement from this conference could become involved and network with those involved in specific issues that they could find interest in. Also trying to increase virtual workshops, maybe making, because the condensing of an hour's worth of discussion into 2 or 3 sentences can be kind of difficult. Maybe recording the discussions, putting them up online or something, and allowing further discussion to branch off of that. Also have some way of connecting people after the conference so that they can continue to share ideas, and also having specific things, take-home goals and messages, because the subject matter can be very broad, and so having something like the last group was saying, go home and contact your senator, go home and become involved in a group or something like that, a take-home message, or would be nice. And also the making available of whatever the new youth plan B is would be very good. Thank you.
All right, table 2. We had a couple of ideas. One was to get maybe a headliner type person, somebody famous, somebody well known, keynote speaker to really somebody just with a lot of energy to come in and just rally everybody up and get everybody super excited and just get the energy level really high to help the ideas flow from people jumping around. Just get a lot of energy going. Another idea was to have kind of technical training sessions interspersed within the discussions. So one example was economics crash course for people who don't have any background at all in economics. That plays a role in a lot of our discussions, so have kind of a mini crash course training session. Or another idea is like a action training session, like a train the trainer. How can you go out and be an activist, and what can you do? How can you teach other people? How can you facilitate similar dialogues? So kind of a training session like that. Another idea is to more heavily recruit young adults and college students, and just try to get more college students involved. Bigger conference, but still keep the intergenerational dialogue as well. So still have professionals, all types of other people interspersed in various conversations. And so another idea is basically to have these types of conversations throughout the year, little modular conferences, we call them. We could put together some materials on how we had this conversation and give it to other people so that similar conversations can happen throughout the world, essentially, and have a way for them to give us the results of their conversations back and compile all of them together. So that maybe our next big conference could feed off of that and take it to the next step from there. So those were a few of ours.